lockdown.
My name is Larry Dashiell, and I am a regional administrator here at Portland Public Schools. So today, we are going to share with you some things that we hope will keep you safe in this building, and not only in this building, but as society has shown, anywhere, anytime. And some of the things that we hope you will be able to take with you if need be and never have to. So, George.
Good afternoon, everyone. When you have a mandatory training, and I've been through a bunch of them, sometimes, you just show up. But I'm hoping that all of you will pay attention for the next 55 minutes because some of the things that you'll be exposed to could possibly save your life or reduce casualties that may occur. Some people may say that Portland Public Schools has not had an active shooter or a school shooting. We actually had one, Buckman School, back in the 90s, where a person came in and shot at a secretary. And then we've had many other shootings just outside the school that could have occurred inside. And so with the nature of how violence has increased around the country, and even right next door to us in Vancouver, so far this week, we had a woman come in, go up to the 4th floor and shoot a man. And then we had a man come in and shoot his manager and then kill himself. And so we all know Vancouver's just a rock throw away. And I'm a big believer in prevention. You want to know how to respond, but we try to do as much as we can to prevent things from occurring. Those of you who don't know me, I was a police officer for 25 years with here in Portland. And part of that time, 5 years, I was a homicide detective and supervisor. And unfortunately, I've been to many, many death scenes and had to make notification to many grieving families. And so if it sounds like I'm being really serious, I really take this very seriously, and I care for each and every one of you and your families. So, malls and schools are considered soft targets. Soft targets means pretty easily to attack if somebody wanted to do something. Primarily because we are public organizations and we're pretty public friendly. And you can't turn them into prisons. So that makes us a soft target. One of the differences between this building and administrative buildings is at the schools, they're responsible for our children. They have classrooms full of children. So we have young kids all the way up through high school. In our administrative buildings, we are all generally adults. We all generally don't have classrooms full of kids that we're responsible for. So each and every one of us is responsible for our own safety, right? Each and every one of us is responsible for our own safety. And so I would like to emphasize with you the importance of looking at your capabilities, looking at what you are capable of, both physically and morally, and think about that before a serious incident occurs. You always want to try to think about, because once an incident occurs, the adrenaline starts to flow, and people don't always think rationally or strategically. So, since we are all individually responsible, we're going to have to change our mindset. And when I say change our mindset and some of our habits, it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, with this building being a soft target, that if you see something suspicious, you need to say something. We're teaching the children at our schools, it's not being a snitch. If you see something suspicious, say something. And we have averted, just this school year, a few incidents that could have been traumatic because students spoke up and told somebody they trust, and then we were able to get ahead of it. And so I really want to emphasize the importance of, if you see something suspicious, say something. And if you need the police, right, if there's a situation and you feel that the police should be involved, please don't call security services first. Call the police. Then you can call security services afterwards and say, hey, I called the police. Because security services, half of security services is right here. Right? And we're working on that. We're working to gain capacity to become more of a full service security department. Right now, we'll go to the video.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
Naturally, that's a little disturbing to watch, but most likely it'll be something similar to that in an active shooter situation. And naturally, active shooter means someone's actively shooting. I'm actually more concerned about someone coming into this building looking for a specific person. We have a lot of domestic violence situations that go on where people come in looking for a specific person, but the same things apply. You know, you want to remain calm. You'll hear us say this over and over again. You want to assess the situation and then make a decision. And with you guys being adults and not having classrooms, and your personal safety is up to you, they say run. We use the term evacuate. You know, in other words, get out of the building if you can safely. If you can't safely, then hide in the best place you can. And generally, the best place to hide is behind a locked door. And one of the reasons why you want to hide behind a locked door is the Department of Homeland Security has reviewed all of the mass shootings that have occurred. And what they determined was that the average time from beginning to end in a mass shooting was 11 minutes or less. And so people who are involved with these mass shootings, the suspects, know that once the first shot is fired, that law enforcement or the emergency responders are on their way. And they oftentimes are not going to try to spend a lot of time to get behind a locked door. And so Patrick and Molly have spent months as their second jobs going around here trying to figure out where the best safe rooms are. Department of Homeland Security also has determined that there is no guaranteed characteristic of a school shooter or an active shooter. It could be a man, a woman, it could be, we've had 12-year-olds just a couple weeks ago, a 12-year-old in New Mexico sawed off a shotgun, put it in their violin case, took it to school, went into the gym where there were 500 kids, and shot the student in the face and shot another student. So that's a 12-year-old. We've been seeing here locally more and more young people having guns. And so one of the things I'd like for all of you to do is to, with this building, walk around with a purpose, right? You want to walk around and make sure you're familiar with the stairwells. You want to know where the safe rooms are, and they're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. You want to know, basically, they have what's called in law enforcement hard cover versus concealment. Hard cover are those areas where it's maybe difficult for bullets to penetrate. So when you're walking around, that's one thing you want to be looking for. Concealment can hide you, but bullets can penetrate pretty easily. And so you're looking at metal doors, you're looking at file cabinets, maybe really hard oak, as examples of hardcover. And one of the things I want to share with you as well is that what we're talking to you about today are guidelines. They are guidelines, right? So no matter if you're at a mall, if you're at a baseball game, or you're here in this building, whatever the situation, because we all could come up with no-win situations, right? Everyone in here can come up with what's considered a no-win situation. You never want to give up, no matter how bad it looks. You never want to give up. But you also, too, want to remain calm, look at what your options are, so assess the situation, and then make a decision. The worst thing you can do is just freeze and do nothing. Okay, so having said all of that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly and Patrick.
Hi there, I'm Molly Emmons, for those of you that don't know me. First of all, we just want to say thanks for coming to this training. We know that it was mandatory and it was on very short notice, so we appreciate everybody making the time in your busy schedules to come. Also, we just passed around some note cards. We're going to have a short amount of time after the training session for some questions, but we would also like you to write down any questions, comments, or feedback that you might have. Our plan is to post all of those on our emergency management website from all 5 trainings, because there's been a lot of good questions and great feedback, and we want to share that with everybody in the building. We also plan to put this PowerPoint presentation on our emergency management website, so if there's questions or you want to go and refresh yourself, you can find it on the department page of emergency management. And we're also filming this video or this training, and we're going to make it into a video. So for people that can attend or new employees coming into the building after the training, they'll have that as a tool as well. So as George had said, that Patrick and I spent several months going through the building conducting a vulnerability assessment. And from that vulnerability assessment, we've put together some guidelines for emergency response and preparedness. And some of these guidelines are very similar to the schools. So if you're out in the schools, some of your responses and the signals will be the same, because we want to be very consistent district-wide. So this is the list of the BESC emergency signals. Again, these are going to be the same signals that are used in the school buildings, and the response will be basically the same as well. We also will let you know in scenarios that might be happening in the building when you would hear one of these signals and how these signals would be communicated. So our first signal is a lockdown signal. If you hear an announcement either through your phone, the VoIP phone system, from one of your colleagues saying lockdown, your cell phone, the PA system, or our two-way communications that we have throughout the building for our designated communications people, if you hear this signal, you might think or know that there is some sort of imminent danger inside the building. This would be shots being fired, a hostage situation, or some person inside the building with some sort of a weapon. A few years ago, we rolled out in all of the schools with our new VoIP phones an emergency messaging system for lockdown, evacuation, and earthquake. We're planning on putting those on the phones here in this building once everybody's been trained. And everybody will have the ability to activate that message. So it won't matter where there's the emergency is happening inside the building. With a push of 3 buttons, you could announce that there is some sort of lockdown happening. And I can let you know what that sounds like right now.
Lockdown. 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 Lockdown.
So clear, concise communication, lockdown. If you hear the lockdown message and you don't hear something that says drill beforehand, you know that we're in some sort of emergency situation, and your first thought is to evacuate this building. If you can get out of the building, get out of the building. If you can't, Patrick and I have some maps that we have for each floor where you'll be able to actually go and lock yourself down in place. These are locked rooms that have either no window or very small window. And if you can't find a locked room, and then we would want you to be able to fight. So that's the run, hide, fight model. Our next emergency signal is the fire signal. We've all heard the fire alarm go off in this building. Again, that would be communicated through the fire alarm system. If for some reason the fire alarm system was down, we would communicate that through the VoIP phone, through the evacuation, and or through a verbal command using our voice, everybody yelling fire. The evacuation, this would also be communicated through the VoIP phone. We would use this in the situation if there was some sort of maybe maintenance emergency in the building where we wanted everybody to evacuate, but we didn't necessarily need to pull the fire alarm. This has also been an emergency message loaded onto the VoIP phones, or we would use our verbal voice command of evacuate. And this is what this would sound like coming over the VoIP.
Evacuate. 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 Immediately leave the building. Proceed to your designated gathering point.
So hopefully everybody knows where your department's evacuation gathering points are. If you don't know, you can talk to Patrick and or your director or manager is in your department. If you're in some other place in the building and you evacuate, we still want you to go and report into your designated area once you're outside of the building. Usually for fire, we want you to get 50 feet in 60 seconds when you're evacuating, so that's as quickly as possible, and then you would head over to your designated evacuation areas. The reverse evacuation, this would be done using a verbal command only, and most likely by first responders. This would be if there was some sort of situation outside of the building and we wanted to bring staff inside, we would come and verbally communicate to you that we were having a reverse evacuation, bring you inside the building, potentially lock the exterior doors until the threat outside was gone. A controlled evacuation, again, this would be done with a verbal command, a face-to-face command. If there was some sort of a suspicious device in the building, we would maybe evacuate department by department and ask everybody to turn off electronic devices and things like that. The duck, cover, and hold on command, there is no signal for this other than the earth moving. So if you feel the ground moving, that's your signal to duck, cover, and hold on. You could also use your voice to notify your colleagues that there was an earthquake if they didn't know. Hopefully they would know. Shelter in place, we've also identified rooms in this building that we could shelter colleagues and staff if there was some sort of air contamination. These rooms are a little bit different than the locked rooms. They might have windows, they don't necessarily need to lock, but they might have limited ventilation and things like that we could shut down if there's some sort of chemical spill that would require a shelter in place. And again, this would be done either through a verbal command and or over the VoIP PA system. And then the all clear. If you hear an all clear signal, you know that the threat or the danger or the emergency situation is over. This is always given in a verbal command. If it's in some sort of a lockdown situation, it'll be by first responders coming to that locked room and unlocking the door and telling you that it's all clear. You've also probably heard it at your evacuation sites when the fire drill's over or the danger inside the building is over, and your communication coordinator at that site is giving you the all clear. So that's always done in a verbal, face-to-face type of situation. So the VoIP phone system, it's a 3-button push system to activate the messaging, the emergency messaging. We didn't password protect this because we don't want anybody to have to remember passwords in the event of a crisis. The drawback with not password protecting it is we do have a lot of inadvertent activations in the schools, people pushing buttons and locking down schools. So we want to make sure that everybody's trained on this and understands that it will be on your phones, and to make sure that you're not just pushing buttons and wondering what the emergency lockdown message will sound like, because you will put the entire building into a lockdown. There's a little more in-depth PowerPoint presentation on the IT webpage as well as the emergency management webpage that really talks about where the buttons are and what they do. But we encourage everybody to look at this, go on and look at that other PowerPoint because this will be loaded on your phones fairly quickly, and It'll be very interesting if somebody puts the building into a lockdown. And security also gets notified of what phone activated the lockdown message, so we'll know. We've heard all kinds of interesting reasons why the phone went into a lockdown at the schools. So this is our evacuation procedures. These are going to be very similar to the evacuation procedures that we already have in the building, the way you evacuate in the event of a fire drill or some sort of fire emergency. We're just defining these procedures a little bit more. We're going to provide locations of the fire extinguishers, the pull stations, AEDs. So these procedures are in draft form, but they'll be coming out pretty soon, but they won't be much different from what you already know. For BESC and medical emergencies, again, these are the same procedures that we've had in the building. For a fire, the big thing is if you hear that fire alarm go off, you need to evacuate. I think sometimes we get a little complacent in this building and we think it's just a drill, and so we don't evacuate the building. We also want everybody calling 911, unless you know it's a drill. We want that redundant system to notify first responders that we are having some sort of emergency in the building. For medical emergencies, knowing who's CPR and first aid trained in your department, in your area, is very important. We're going to provide some lists of those folks that have the CPR, AED, first aid training, and hopefully post those in areas so that everybody can know that information. We also want to make sure that if you're having some sort of a medical emergency in your department or in your area, that you're sending somebody to meet first responders at the front door. What happens here a lot is the building is a department will be having some sort of a medical emergency, and first responders get here and they don't know where to go. And minutes matter when it's some sort of medical emergency. So make sure somebody stays with the person that's having the medical emergency, and somebody goes and meets first responders. Those are the two critical things to remember when responding or dealing with this sort of an event.
As Molly and George mentioned, we've spent some time going through floor by floor, department area by department area to identify those spaces that might be used in the event of both a lockdown, that would be an active shooter or hostage situation, or in the event of a release, a chemical release that would require we turn off the ventilating system in the building and go to rooms that we can easily control infiltration from outside. Typically, those events are very short-lived. We've produced the maps. We have egress routes, and as Molly mentioned, we have the locations of the pull stations, AEDs, and fire extinguishers. I'll be handing those out probably on Friday. I'll go throughout the building. They're in an 11-inch by 17-inch format. They also will be on the emergency management website, and you'll see a variety of documents, all of those that we refer to here, and in the coming months more. Yes, now they're color-coded. The blue denotes locked rooms. As Molly said, these are rooms with no windows, and a very few cases, very small windows. They can be locked on the inside. Green is for shelter. In some cases, a room is good for either locked room or for shelter. I think that's about it, yeah. These are the people who may save your life given an emergency situation. These are trained, this is a trained cadre of volunteers. We meet prior to every drill. We meet after each drill to debrief, identify what areas could stand improvement, identify what changes we want to make to our procedures. I'd like to thank them publicly. I know many of them have been doing this for a number of years. I'd like to thank their supervisors also for allowing them to volunteer their precious time. Again, the numbers may change, but the procedures probably will not. The draft for the BESC Emergency Response Plan is under review at this moment. Today, we want to concern ourselves primarily with an active shooter / hostage situation and a related situation where there might be a disturbance, a physical disturbance or confrontation. The intruder hostage situation, the first thing to remember, please understand that almost every emergency situation is characterized by chaos. There's a great deal of confusion, often a great deal of noise. It is incumbent upon each and every one of you to provide for your own personal safety. The best way to do this is by remaining calm, assessing the situation. Where's the noise coming from? Is there a door where there is no noise? Can I see a door? Is it open? Can I get out? If so, go. So remain calm, assess the situation, and then take action. If you're not sure of where a shooter might be, you've heard shots, you don't know where they are, you don't want to run into a person carrying a gun and using it, then that's what the locked rooms are for. If you get to a locked room and somebody slams the door in your face and locks it, don't pound on the door. Go to the next one. Okay? Go to the next one. If you have to go to 4, well, you're running. Where's the open door? Those of you who are in locked rooms or away from the disturbance, call 911. If a dozen of you call 911, we don't care. We're happy. Dispatch in the emergency center, they don't care. They are assured of getting information that will allow police and or fire response within 4 minutes. That's our window. Those of you who are safe, initiate the lockdown alert. If you're at your desk and you hear shots fired on the other side of the building, pick up your phone, hit the 3 buttons necessary to initiate a lockdown alert and provide for the safety of the other 449 people in the building. Move away from the threat into a locked room. If you know where the threat is and you know you can safely exit, don't bother with the room, get out of the building. If you get out of the building, go to some, and the weather is inclement, go to some place where it's not raining. Go up to Tubman. That's one of the designated gathering spots. That is in our emergency response plan. If there's somebody hurt and you can safely provide assistance, please render aid. If you endanger yourself trying to render aid, then you've just made for 2 targets rather than 1. Communications coordinators, I say this every time. We've covered this a lot in the meetings. I just want to hit it again. You've got new radios. It's part of our district strategy to provide a communications network that can go from one school clear to the other side of the district to another school. We're moving on that. We get closer each year. But communications coordinators, we ask them to put the radio phones in the chargers and keep the chargers on the desk. If there's a situation where you have to run and you have to find either get out of the building or find a locked room, that radio phone may be critical. If you're taken hostage, don't yell. Don't try to establish a lot of eye contact. Don't argue. Don't provide suggestions. Don't correct. Just nod your head. Do what you're told. Remember, you're gambling on 4 minutes. This is what's going on. If you're not directly involved, as I said, remain calm, assess the situation, take action. Find a locked room or get out. If you encounter the person carrying the gun, fight. You got nothing to lose. Be prepared to evacuate if directed to do so. We have plans which we don't divulge for security reasons, but there will be a first responder and, if possible, a director of the department knocking on the doors, identifying themselves, and showing that you may safely exit the room. In a hostage situation, we may have a controlled evacuation. Molly mentioned that. So you'll hear a knock on the door. There will be a demonstration that it is safe for you to go. They will tell you where to go. Typically, there will be somebody taking you there to get you out of the building and away from harm. Disorderly behavior may happen. Many of us have seen this on occasion, either in a school or here at the BESC. If there's somebody who's wound up waving their arms and acting in an unreasonable or threatening fashion, we want you, again, remain calm, assess the situation, take what action seems reasonable. If the occurrence seems headed for any kind of a physical engagement, call 911. Send somebody to the door. Ensure the safety of staff. If you're not engaged with a person, then fade away. If a person gets hurt during an altercation, don't everybody rush to that one person. Somebody help them out. But don't everybody come there. If somebody's arguing, don't join the argument. We want to de-escalate any situation of this sort. That's the objective. Notify security. If you're sitting at your desk and it's looking like things are getting a little weird out there with the people waving their arms and acting in a threatening manner, notify security too. Render assistance to anybody that gets hurt. Drag them away from the scene of the altercation. Anybody who's not involved, please take notes. The scene is vivid for the first 15 minutes or until you talk to the first person. Then things get a little fuzzy. So documentation will help in virtually every situation of this sort.
So this is an emergency flip chart. These are what we use in our school classrooms, but we're going to send some out. We're going to redo these for the BESC emergency plan. These are basically cliff notes for emergency response. We're also going to include the maps for every floor. They'll be very small, but when you're walking the building with a purpose, you could bring your flip charts and find all the exits and all the locked rooms and all the shelter rooms. So we're hoping to have these out probably late spring, and we'll hand these out to all the departments, and you can hang them in your cubicles. I brought an emergency bucket. These are emergency supplies. These will also go into some of the locked rooms. So in the event that there's an emergency and you need to be locked in a room for a while, there'll be a few emergency supplies in there for you to be able to utilize. I'll turn it over to George.
Okay, so as they were speaking, I was looking around the room, and I want to thank you guys for paying attention and taking this very seriously. So I appreciate that. We're hoping that there'll be additional training. So this is just the first information sharing. So we're not here thinking that, hey, we've got it all figured out, everything's perfect, right? This is just the first step. One of the things in the training I've gone through is they've emphasized if it's predictable, it's preventable. And what I mean by that is if you get indicators, information that there's going to be a problem, or, and I use the domestic situation. So let's say, in a relationship that you either have a restraining order or you have a partner who is threatening to do violence towards you, please share it with a supervisor that you trust or security services. Then we can try to take some preventive measures, like maybe get security here, because we do have a contracted security department. We have great relationship with the Portland Police Bureau, so we can take some preventative steps to try to reduce any type of problem that may occur. We can even reach out to that person and let them know not to come here, which we've done quite a few times. So that's one of the things that's part of the change in our mindset. And then I'd like to ask all of you, please start wearing your identification badges, okay? Because it makes it a little easier for folks to know maybe who's a visitor, who's not. We're working to try to get additional security measures for this building because we are a soft target. And so the security people are not going to know everybody in this building, and it'll make it easier for them to be able to question whoever is not wearing ID. We've gotten permission to secure this north door that leads over towards the Water Bureau. We'd like to have as many of the perimeter doors secured as possible. And so that's another thing that we're working on. I'm hoping in my budget this year, and if not this year, pushing for next year, I'd like to have a security person by the main entrance to just provide extra eyes and ears to help keep us safe. Other coming attractions is we'd like to have on the inside PPS, similar to the child abuse and sex abuse training, mandatory emergency preparedness training, where everyone, because we want everyone to be comfortable with what they should do in the event of an emergency. In the one shooting that I spoke about over in Vancouver, they interviewed, I was watching it this morning as I was preparing to come to work. They interviewed one of the employees, and she said, I heard 4 shots, and then I went ahead and went into the safe room. And so that's the kind of, said it very calmly, very matter of fact, that's the kind of things we want all of our folks to know and feel comfortable doing. Even though this, so if we have people from Rice or Tubman that are here today, we're going to be doing a vulnerability assessment of Rice and Tubman, but some of the things we're talking about can be applied no matter where you go. Okay, just to be respectful of everyone's time, just want to say thank you very much. And if you see something suspicious, say something.
Evacuate.